Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of In this episode, I'm reviewing White Shark by Peter Benchley, which I had intended to have this read and reviewed no later than Labor Day weekend because it is technically a summer book. But because of me juggling quite a few things, I wasn't able to actually finish reading this until the end of September. And by then, it was time for me to focus on my Halloween lineup. So instead of me neglecting my favorite time of the year or just reserving this review until next summer, I decided to go on and take the opportunity and knock it out while I had the chance. Before I get started, I would like to thank Blake Kelly for recommending White Shark to me, as I really did enjoy this book. So Blake, if you're watching, I hope you enjoy this review, and thank you. Also, even though White Shark is out of print, getting your hands on a copy is not hard to do because hardback and paperback editions are all over eBay, which, if I'm being brutally honest, I wouldn't pay no more than $5 or $10 for this book. But without me rambling on anymore, let's see what happens when the coastal town of Waterboro, Connecticut and Osprey Island is invaded by a renegade experiment from World War II. White Shark by Peter Benchley opens up in 1945, where a Nazi doctor who had worked for Hitler escaped Germany by submarine. And while him and his comrades embark on a 50-day journey across the Atlantic, we discover they're transporting a humanoid experiment that they intend to use as a weapon of war. However, 4 weeks into their journey, their submarine explodes, and while everyone aboard dies, the bronze case where they kept the experiment sinks to the ocean floor. From here, we fast forward to 1996, where a photographer for the National Geographic and his pilot uncover the case as they're exploring the ocean, which, upon their discovery, they load the case onto a ship and bring it closer inland. And even though the ship receives a command to not open the case, the photographer disobeys and accidentally releases the humanoid creature. Shortly thereafter, we meet Chase and Tallman, who are the owners of the Osprey Island Marine Institute. Also with them is Chase's young son Max, who's visiting for the summer. Then eventually we meet Dr. Amanda Macy, who's using their facility to house and experiment with her sea lions. And while this has the potential to become an adventurous summer romance, everything goes horribly wrong as something starts to kill off the locals and the surrounding sea life. Then, as threat levels rise, those on Osprey Island discover that it's up to them to put an end to a renegade experiment that the Nazis created decades ago. White Shark was published by Peter Benchley in 1994, where it gained average reviews from critics. And in 1997, it was republished under the name Creature, as its previous title was seen as a red herring. Then, in 1998, it received a miniseries adaptation of the same name. Unlike Jaws, where Benchley used the great white as a bloodthirsty killing machine, he used his novel White Shark as the opportunity to break the stigma around sharks. In the past, Benchley expressed that he greatly regretted writing Jaws due to it placing sharks in an untrue negative light. And at the time of Benchley writing White Shark, he had already become a strong advocate for the protection of sharks. Fun facts! Here's a few things you might not know about Peter Benchley. Prior to Peter Benchley becoming an author and a screenwriter, he served the Marine Corps, he was a reporter for the Washington Post, he was a television editor for Newsweek, and in 1967, he became a speechwriter for Lyndon B. Johnson. Following his success of Jaws, Benchley pursued a publishing career that spanned from the 70s through the millennium. And in 1994, he was the first to host Shark Week on the Discovery Channel. Unfortunately, Benchley passed away in 2006 of pulmonary fibrosis. Now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoilers section, which, if you haven't read this before, I'm about to reveal some things that could ruin the experience for you. So if you would like to click away, all you have to do is scroll down to the comments section, and you'll see that I have a pinned comment at the top with the timestamp in it. Once you click on that timestamp, it will direct you away from the spoilers and bring you to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this, so ready, set, go! Since everyone's had the opportunity to click away, I would like to talk about a few of my favorite moments. First off, even though it was predictable that the creature could live beyond its aquatic habitat, I really did love the first time that it walked onto land. And even though I knew this was coming, I was really surprised that the creature had to perform this Heimlich maneuver on itself, where it could get all of the water out of its lungs so it could breathe oxygen. Then, after it did this, it walked into a warehouse where it scaled the wall, then hung upside down like a bat. I really appreciated this moment because it proved to me that the creature could do a lot more than what I considered. And I was really expecting like we were going to get some scenes where the creature was killing people by scaling a wall or hanging upside down and just catching them off guard by all of these awesome moves. But unfortunately, what we see here never happens again. My next favorite moment was the creature's origin story, which this was told by an elderly man named Jacob Franks, who was able to escape Nazi Germany. And in his telling, we learned that when he was a child, he had worked as an apprentice for his father, who was a pharmacist. So when the Nazis abducted him and his family, they considered his background and forced Jacob to work under a man who was Dr. Mengele's rival. Then we discover that Jacob helped conduct human experiments with the intent to transform these people into the perfect killing machine. However, during this time, all they received was nothing but failed results. And it wasn't until an SS officer had been sent to them as a subject that they finally gained a successful outcome. Which, to make this even more unsettling, we discover that the SS officer who had become the creature had actually been a homicidal maniac who loved to kill for the sake of killing. I really enjoyed this backstory, especially with the concept of how a human being could transform someone else into a bloodthirsty killer. Also, with the SS soldier being a homicidal maniac beforehand, this proved to me that no matter what form he was in, you could not reason with this individual. But I will admit that I was a little disappointed because after receiving this really cool backstory, it made me wish that we could have gotten inside of the creature's psyche or memory a little bit more. And had that happened, I think that the creature would have had a little bit more development as a character. My final favorite moment was when Chase and Amanda killed the creature, which this came about because when Amanda went to go check on the sea lions, Max suggested that they hide inside the decompression chamber. But when Chase explained that the chamber only locked from the outside, he concocts a plan where he uses a mirror to cast his reflection and lure the creature inside. Then, once he has the creature where he wants him, Chase slams the door shut and has Amanda drop the pressure, then raise it back up, which, because of this drastic change, it causes the creature to explode. Although this moment was predictable due to the amount of focus that the decompression chamber received, I still felt satisfied when the creature exploded. Also, leading up to this moment, there was a lot of suspense that kept me on the edge of my seat. I would like to take this opportunity to bitch about Chief Ronald Gibson, who very much like the mayor in Jaws is your typical do-nothing authority figure who's more concerned about financial gain than he is the well-being of his people. Like, early on, it's explained to this shit smear that it might be in his best interests to delay the blessing of the fleet celebration because of there being dead bodies and a mysterious tape of a humanoid creature that's hanging out in the water. Well, this pig bastard's like, I'm not going to delay the biggest event of the summer just because of a few stiffs in a video. Oh, hell no, we're going to go on and do this and have us a grand old time. So, as you can imagine, when this blew up in his face, I was really happy to see him shit a brick. White Shark by Peter Benchley primarily felt like an adventure novel, although it did have its horror elements. And because of how this book was constructed, it feels like it could fit into the subcategories of eco-horror and warfare horror. Also, as I read, I did notice that there were quite a few themes, such as we have how the past can affect future generations, the destigmatizing of white sharks, the environmental awareness of sea life and their habitats, and greedy politics. Character-wise, although I did enjoy our protagonist, no one really felt like they were outstanding. And because of there not really being any complex characters, it really felt like Benchley downplayed his characters to focus more so on the topics that I'm about to cover. Which, don't get me wrong, these are really important topics, and this book does provide a great opportunity to learn about those. It's just that I wish we could have received some more character development, or at least some complex characters. Theme-wise, I feel like the overall focus of this book shows how the horrors of the past can continue to affect future generations, which in this case, it's wartime horrors. And this is seen by how a doctor who is similar to Dr. Mengele has invented a weapon that has stood the test of time. And as this monster has survived long past Hitler's reign, it kind of becomes a symbolic reminder of the human experiments that occurred during one of the most deplorable times in history. Despite the title of this book, a great white shark isn't the main antagonist or even the protagonist. Instead, we have a pregnant great white that floats in and out of the story and becomes the main focus of those on Osprey Island, which she mostly stands as the opportunity for the reader to learn that sharks aren't these bloodthirsty killing machines like what we saw in Jaws. Now, going into this, I didn't realize that Peter Benchley regretted writing Jaws due to the stigma that it produced. So after I finished my read, I really saw where this stood as a reverse side of the coin compared to Jaws. And while I was reading, I noticed where it stresses big time that sharks have just as much of a right to live as anything else, and the great white is not the boogeyman of the sea despite popular belief. Also, while on that subject, this book does present a great focus in regards to the well-being of other ocean inhabitants, which, because of Chase being an advocate for the ocean and everything that lives in it, I really did appreciate this book's level of awareness, especially since this was written in the 90s. Aside from that, I noticed the topic of greedy politics, which I'm assuming this is a reoccurring theme with Benchley's work, because when I read Jaws about 10 years ago, I noticed that he focused on this subject big time with that book. And this is also me just going out on a limb here, but I'm going to assume that Benchley was not a huge fan of corrupt small-town politics whatsoever. Now, similar to the book Jaws, we do have a character in White Shark that reminded me of the mayor in that classic, because it showed that this individual was more concerned about revenue versus actually protecting his citizens. Overall, White Shark didn't scare me, creep me out, or gross me out. And aside from the creature design and a few kills here and there, this book had very few horror elements. White Shark by Peter Benchley was a fun read. However, I do feel like it had a few missed opportunities, which in my opinion, the biggest missed opportunity was the blessing of the fleet celebration. Now, the reason why I say this is because throughout the book, it really stresses the importance behind this event. And because of that, I was actually thinking that we were going to have just a pure massacre on that day. However, the event comes and goes with very little bloodshed, which, because of that, I did feel disappointed because I was expecting more. Then, after that came and went, I did fall out of the book just a little bit because I started to worry if I was going to be cheated out of a climatic ending. But luckily enough, the ending was satisfying, even though it did feel like it was rushed. At the end of the day, I simply felt like White Shark was okay. And with me saying that, I do believe this book leans more towards the good side of okay versus the bad side of okay. Now, even with that being said, I do still recommend this book if you are looking for more adventure versus horror. On to the questions. My first question is, what is a horror book you would recommend about a man-made monster? Also, what is your favorite underwater creature? Personally, I absolutely love the octopus. I think they are so very fascinating. I believe they're intelligent, and I love how they're able to use their body to slide through tiny spaces. Also, I think they're really adorable, which, of course, with me saying that, obviously, I am Team Cthulhu. Well, now that we have that covered, I would like to use this opportunity to thank my Patreon contributors. Here's a list of my Patreon contributors, and as you can see, some of them are creators, so be sure to check out their work. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon as well, I have a link available in the description section of this episode, where for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos. And if you have a profession that you would like for me to tie to your name, just let me know and I'll include that with the shout out. Also, I do have another tier available where for $10 a month, I'll still give you the shout out as you see here, but I do creepy photography on the side, so at the beginning of every month, I'll send you over a creepy photo that I did, which after you receive it, you can print it off and do whatever you like. So, if you're able to do this, that's great. If not, no sweat. I just hope you return to this channel so we can have a good time together. Also, if you would like to hit me up on social media, links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all available in the description section of this episode. And if you have yet to subscribe to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I have more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a great week and sweet nightmares.